What's going on, guys? So in today's video, I want to talk about 5 shows that should be on the DC streaming service that's supposed to be out later this year. The reason why I wanted to make this video was because news dropped that they are going to be making a new show called Metropolis by the producers of Gotham that revolves around Lex Luthor and Lois Lane in a Metropolis pre-Superman, and they deal with a bunch of weird stuff that's going on. Now, I don't know how you guys feel about another pre-Superman show when we already had Smallville a few years back. We got Krypton coming out later this year on Sci-Fi. You also have a very sporadic Superman appearance on Supergirl on the CW. I'm just not really interested in another show about Lex Luthor and Lois Lane with no Superman. Granted, they did say before Superman, so maybe we'll get Superman later on, but still, I'm kind of done with the pre-superhero shows. I've got my fill with Gotham, I've got my fill with Smallville, I'm kind of over it. But that won't be the only show on this DC streaming service. They are coming back with Titans, which is starting to look really great. They're also going to have Young Justice Season 3, and they are making an animated Harley Quinn show, so you can see right there they are trying to bring a lot of interesting, cool concepts to this DC streaming service, and that's why I wanted to make this video today. But as always, guys, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future videos on this channel. I do want to point out with all of these shows, I do envision like 10 to 13 episodes max. There shouldn't be like 21 or anything like that. No, they should be like 10 to 13 episodes per season, and that way every episode is good and you don't really have filler episodes. Also, I tried to stay away from a lot of the easy picks like a Green Lantern show or a Batgirl show, because we're gonna get that stuff in the movies, and if you've seen the CW shows, you know that a lot of stuff is restricted from the shows because it's gonna be in the movies. The first show that I think needs to be on this DC streaming service is Constantine, and I'm talking about the one that was actually on NBC back in the day, and it only got 1 season and got canceled. They need to bring that show back and resurrect it and use freaking Matt Ryan as Constantine, because he's a really good one. I mean, we've seen him in that first season of Constantine, and then he came on Arrow, and then he's gonna be on Legends in the next coming week. So, you know, he's a really good Constantine, and if you didn't see season 1 of Constantine, go back and watch it, because it was actually pretty good once it got its legs churning. Unfortunately, it got canceled way too early. So with this DC service looking for content, why not bring in something that people are already going to like? They enjoy him on the other shows, that's why he's been able to come back. They're even hoping that he's going to be like a consistent character on Legends of Tomorrow, because it doesn't look like they're planning on giving him a CW show. So why not give him like 10 episodes, 13 episodes on this DC streaming service and just make really cool magic-filled stories, and you can bring in other mythical, like, you know, magical beasts into this series, because that's what he deals with. The cool thing about Constantine is I feel like he has a lot that you can work with that's very different from everybody else. I mean, one, the character's badass, but secondly, you can also bring in like the religious aspect of things, where you can bring in angels and demons, and then you have the magical aspect where you can kind of do whatever you want with that side. But I think the coolest thing that Constantine would bring to the table that the other shows don't have is you can make this very like horror-esque type show with Constantine, because he can deal with all of the scary shit that's out there. And I feel like that would bring in a different audience, because not everybody likes the very bubbly kind of superheroes. So if you bring in this one superhero who's badass, he doesn't care what he thinks, he has no problem with sacrificing people to get what he needs to make the world a better place. Like, it's just this different prospect or aspect of a character that you don't really get from any other show, and I think bringing back that character, actually letting him thrive, like I said, in like 10 to 13 episodes, I think it'd be really something people would be interested in watching on a DC streaming service. Side note, you can totally bring in Zatanna, because everybody loves Zatanna, and also just start building the Justice League Dark on this show, because it's probably never going to happen in the DCEU, so make it happen on the streaming service. The second show that should be on this DC streaming service is the Justice Society of America, and I'm talking about like the golden silver age Justice Society of America, not the ones they hint at in the current continuity. I'm talking about the old school ones. Just imagine having a show based in older times. I think this show would be awesome, especially if you're doing it as like a period piece, like you're doing it in the 30s and 40s and 50s, something like that. I think that's something that is not happening in, you know, comic book TV shows right now. Everything is today, in this age, this era, and it's kind of just like, you know, it's fun, but, you know, I want to see something different. Give me something that I'm not seeing on every other channel that's out there right now. If you do the Justice Society of America, you can bring in so many old characters and make them like just new and fresh, and I think people would really enjoy that. Now, I will say don't bring in the Trinity, although they were part of the Justice Society. I think you focus on the other characters that are out there. I say bring in Jay Garrick, you know, bring in Hourman, bring in a lot of those different kind of characters because, you know, let them shine. Like, we're gonna get Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman in the movies. I want to see these other characters shine from the older versions of the comic books. I know some people will talk about how they did it on Legends of Tomorrow already, but no, I want to see an actual show with those old school characters. The Legends went, they met them, and then they kind of took one of their people, and then they went throughout time and space and did all this other stuff. I want to see them stay and do stuff in that era, because I think, one, it's a great era to do things in, and like I said, the 40s, 30s, 50s, whatever time they want to do it in, and just have them deal with world problems from that era. You know, they're not fighting all the brainiacs and everything that's coming in. I mean, if they want to do that, that's fine. But I think that just having them, like, just a nice period piece comic book show would be fantastic. You can do that kind of stuff on this DC streaming service, and it might also get fans from the older generations, you know, our fathers, our grandfathers, you know, whatever, might want to be like, oh, I'm interested in seeing that because those are the characters I grew up with. I think that might be kind of cool to try to bring in all the generations together and introducing younger generations to these old school comic book characters. The number 3 show, or shows I should say, that should be on this DC streaming service are Green Hornet and The Shadow. Now, I know a lot of people are like, Juice, those aren't DC, those are Dynamite Comics, bro. Trust me, I totally know that. But one thing I also do know is that DC frequently crosses over with Dynamite Comics. Since they cross over, it would totally make sense that those other characters can cross over as well. And also, I don't see Dynamite Comics making their own streaming service anytime soon, or getting on Netflix, or even making movies, although there has been rumors that there's going to be a Green Hornet movie reboot, but I'll believe it when I see it. Seriously, I think it would be a great idea for DC Comics to go out to other comic brand companies that they've worked with before and be like, hey, would you mind having a show on this? Like, you know, you can show the Dynamite logo before the show or whatever you need to do, and then just make a great show about the Green Hornet, make a great show about the Shadow, maybe have both of them cross over since they're in the same company, and then maybe have like a Batman or any other characters cross over with these shows. The reason why it would be so great is a lot of these shows are detective based, but they also have like these superhero elements. I mean, just recently, Batman crossed over with the Shadow, and the comics were really good. I mean, if you were to show me that in a movie or a show, I would totally be into watching it. There was even a Batman 66 crossover with the Green Hornet. So it's very possible to have these shows be believable in a DC universe because they've done it before in the comics. So why not bring it to, you know, the actual DC streaming service? You don't even need them to cross over with your other shows on the channel, or I should say on the service. You just bring them here. Bring other comic book characters to this realm. You need content, so why not bring awesome comic book characters that you've worked with before and just have, you know, Dynamite help you out in the process. I think it's just a no-brainer to try to bring as much interesting content to this service as possible. You're going to want people to keep paying monthly for this, and if you're not popping out constant amount of content, people are going to want to leave. But if you're like, hey, we got this Titan show, we got, you know, Shadow coming out later, then we're going to bring in Green Hornet along with, you know, some other new shows, people are going to be like, all right, well, I'm going to hold on to the service until then because I really want to see that show. And if they're hits, people are going to be like, okay, I'm definitely going to keep this service because I want to see season 2. I mean, that is strictly why I keep Netflix right now, because I want to see Stranger Things season 3. I don't really care about anything else. I mean, some people talk about the Marvel shows and stuff like that, but, you know, I'm not super into those as much anymore, but I want to see Stranger Things season 3, so I'll be keeping my Netflix till then, no matter how much they're raising the price. So Netflix has got me locked in until that series is over, or the show starts sucking, and I definitely think that's something that the DC streaming service is going to need. They're going to need shows that people are going to want to keep coming back to watch. Number 4 show that should be on this DC streaming service is The Question. Now, I know a lot of people might not know about this character, but I think he could have an amazing show anywhere, to be honest, if you had the right people behind it. But just the concept of The Question is really great. For one, he is a detective and a martial artist, and in his civilian life, he's actually an investigative reporter. So you got freaking badass detective written all over this show already. But let me go ahead and just read you these few little lines from DC Wiki. Vic Sage is driven by a deep personal quest for philosophical meaning, which has taken him through both objectivism and Zen. In some versions, he's portrayed as a paranoid conspiracy theorist. You say conspiracy theorist, eh? You know how much fun you could have with a freaking investigative reporter that's a conspiracy theorist? This dude is going to question everything. Also, did I mention he has no face? That is right. He has no face. You're going to be watching a show where the guy has no face. Now, I should mention that it's actually a mask that he can take off, but it conceals his identity where the homeboy's got no face. This show has so many possibilities in my eyes. Like I said, it's a detective show, so you could already have, like, he's solving murders, he's solving crazy crimes that are going on in the DC universe. Then you can bring in other villains that maybe aren't so, like, crazy superpowered and just have him fight them. You can have him cross over with people like the Birds of Prey, Batman, other detective kind of people, because that's what he does. He's even, if you've seen the, like, animated show, which I think it's Justice League United, he's actually had a relationship with Huntress before. I could make a better pitch for a question show later, but like I said, I do think it's just a really good idea to get a character that not a lot of people know about, because when you're making the show, you can have a little bit of creative freedom, unlike somebody that's like Batman or Superman that have crazy fandoms that'll be like, he wouldn't do that, he'd never do that. With the question, you have that little bit of wiggle room because not everybody is a question expert. Bonus show before we get into the last show that I think should be on this channel is, quickly, I think that the DC streaming service should make a live-action Super Son show. Yes, that is right. Damian Wayne as Robin and Jonathan Kent as Superboy. I think that'd be a really good show. You get some young actors. Stranger Things, like I said, I love to bring them up, have shown that there are good child actors out there. Find some really two good ones that are pretty young in age, maybe like 10 to 13, and just do a small run of this show. Maybe have it like 3 to 4 seasons max. Just as they're young, you can't really have them go to teens. I mean, you can have them join the Teen Titans if you want to connect with your Titan show later, but I think it would be cool to have a kids show on here to apply to the younger demographic, because you're gonna have the cartoons, but you know, sometimes they like to see, you know, live action superheroes as themselves, because I know I did when I was growing up. I was like, oh, that's cool. So by making a Super Son show, you can actually apply to a younger demographic, but at the same time, it might be cool for older people to watch it, because if you read the Super Sons comics, like, they have some really cool action in there, but at the same time, they're kids. I mean, they're barely turning 13. I mean, Jonathan Kent's not 13. Damian Wayne just turned 13 in the comic books. So they're still fairly young, but a Super Son show I think would be really good for the DC streaming service. Like I said, keep them fairly young, and then, you know, keep it around for 3 to 5 seasons, something like that, and then just call it off when they're getting a little too old. Also, another good reason for the Super Son show is I highly doubt we're ever going to see Damian Wayne or Jonathan Kent in the DCEU or in any of the movies anytime soon, so why not just put them on this DC streaming service? And the last show I think should be on this DC streaming service is Earth 2 Society. I don't think you really need to have the society part, but that's what the comic book's called. I would just call the show Earth 2. Disclaimer, I would only call it Earth 2 if you are going to say this is not part of the CW. If they have plans to cross over everything, then I would call it Earth 2 Society, or just call it something else in general, because everybody's gonna be like, oh, is Harrison Wells there? And blah, 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 blah. Going back to the Earth 2 show, I think this would be a great premise for a show, because if you've never read Earth 2 Society, it basically had the original Justice League there, some shit went down, and now there's like basically a whole new Justice League with different characters, and it's awesome. So the reason why I think this show would be great is because you would start off by showing the audience that the original Justice League existed, but something happened where they all died, and now this is the new Justice League. So you don't have to have all the questions of like, is there gonna be Batman here? Is there gonna be Superman? Is this Dick Grayson Batman? Like, you don't have to like, or is it Bruce Wayne Batman? You don't have to have all of that. You would tell them right at the start of the show that yes, all of those characters that you love did exist on this world, but they died saving it. In the comic book, it's called the Apocalypse War, and what happened was Steppenwolf came to Earth with all of these parademons and basically enslaved everybody, and all the heroes have been fighting for like 5 years. So during this war, a lot has happened to our heroes. Wonder Woman is the last Amazon on Earth. Metropolis has fallen and Lois Lane is dead, and the only way for this war to end is basically for Batman to give his life. So what happens is all of these characters fight a way to these towers that Batman needs to get to. During that, Superman is killed by a bunch of parademons because he's looking over at Wonder Woman because he sees Steppenwolf show up and put a spear through her chest. So she dies at the hand of Steppenwolf. All the parademons jump on Superman and make him explode, basically. And Batman ends up getting to the tower, and his daughter, who is Helena Wayne, which is the daughter of Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle, she's following Batman in the Batplane, and she's all like, all right, I'm gonna pick you up when you're done, and he's all like, sorry, there is no after this, and he explodes himself. In a panic, a boom tube opens up, and Helena Wayne sees somebody in there, and she flies toward it along with Kara, who is Supergirl, and they both fly into this boom tube after all of their family has basically died in this war. And once again, the Justice League has saved the day, but they lost all of their heroes in the process. So the Earth is saved, but they have no more heroes. The cool thing about the comic book is it shows the creation of the new heroes, and you can definitely do that in a new show. Like, if you start off the first episode with the death of Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman, that would be totally epic, and then the rest of the episodes that follow are the creations of the new Justice League, basically. And they're not created the way you would think. Like, the Flash gets his powers from the God of Speed. He literally falls from the sky, and he ends up giving the Flash his powers. Alan Scott, who's the Green Lantern of this group, actually gets his powers after he's on a train with his boyfriend, and it explodes, and they both die. Well, Alan Scott survives, and the Earth, it's literally the power of the Earth, gives him the power of the Green Lantern. It's called like the Green Power. So this Green Power is basically the Green Lantern, and it's awesome. Like, it's a different version of the way the Lanterns were used to it. They get their rings and do all of that jazz. Hawkgirl's also in the first issue, but this is what the show would be based around, right? You would just have these new creations, these new visions of creating a new Justice League, and the best thing about this is it's a very diverse cast. For starters, the new Superman on this Earth is black, and his name is Val Zod. At one point in the series, you also do have Dick Grayson, who's in this weird, like, Batman yellow and purple suit, which I thought was actually pretty cool. The interesting thing about this Dick Grayson was he was actually paralyzed. If you read DC Convergence, he actually gets shot in the back by the Joker, but he does end up getting his legs back through a character named Telos, and then later on through technology, and that is how he's able to become this Batman. But I think it would be kind of a cool story to have in this Earth too. Remember how I mentioned Helena Wayne and Supergirl go through that portal? Well, they end up coming back later on as Huntress and Power Girl, and that's really cool because now you can have this new Justice League. And Huntress, I know, is really mad when she sees another Batman. She's like, you're nothing like Bruce Wayne, blah, blah, blah. So you can have this cool arguments going on between these characters that I think would be really awesome in the show. But you want to know the best thing about this idea and the series is it got canceled. And I know a lot of people are like, what? Why would you want to make a show about a comic series that got canceled? The reason why is because there's not a lot of continuity or a lot of things you don't have to worry about. It means you can kind of go free roam with these characters. When it comes to making Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman kind of shows, there's so much history there that you have to deal with, and you're just like, oh. And like I said, with me specifically, when you got fans like me that see something like Gotham and you're changing up all of this classic stuff and you're like, oh, we don't need that, we're just gonna do this, it gets a little frustrating because you love these characters for a certain reason. You're like, no, that's what makes them that character. You can't just change that. And then they're like, nah, you know, all these creators are like, whatever. If you bring in these new characters that don't have that much comic book stuff to back them up, you could actually have a lot of creative freedom with this show. And like I said, it's very different and it's more diverse. You can bring in a whole bunch of cast of characters. People aren't gonna freak out that you're like, why is Superman black? That makes no sense. It does when you show them that the original Superman died. Same goes for Batman and Wonder Woman and other heroes that were from the past. So I think Earth 2 Society would be a cool show that has some comic book appeal, but at the same time it has enough freedom that you'll be able to kind of do whatever you want with it and make something out of these characters that essentially are probably never going to be seen in the comic series again. So there you have it, guys. 5 or 6 shows, to be honest, that I think should eventually be on the DC streaming service. But anyways, guys and gals, I want to know what you thought of this list. Did you like it, or would you prefer some other show be on the DC streaming service? Let me know in the comment sections down below. That's going to be it for me, guys and gals. If you haven't seen any of my latest content, check it out right here. Also, hit that subscribe button for future content. As always, I'm your host, JUICEbox. Remember, when you wake up in the morning, ask yourself something. Have I had my daily dose of juice? See you guys next time. Bye!